Here it comes, a loving sensation. Let's join hands and be one as a nation. We'll forget all the hatred and the greed. Now's the time for us to be free. We'll stand tall, together we will survive. Holding on for a tranquil peace of mind. Know your heart and where you are going. In a perfect world, love will be showing. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go. Are you ready? Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's go. Are you ready? 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 Let's go.
Shabbat Shalom, Mishpachah, and welcome to Hebrew Bible Secrets with your host, Rabbi Beaton. We are reading today from the book of Acts, starting at chapter 14. Acts chapter 14, verse 1. And it came to pass in Iconium, that they went both together into the Qahal of the Yahudim, and so spoke that a great multitude, both of the Yehudim and also of the Greeks, believed. 2. But the unbelieving Yehudim stirred up the Gentiles and poisoned their minds against the brothers. 3. So they stayed there a long time, speaking boldly in Yahweh, who granted testimony to the word of his favour and granted signs and wonders to be done by their hands. 4. But the multitude of the city was divided, and some sided with the Yahudim, and some with the emissaries. 5. And when there was an assault made both of the Gentiles and also of the Yahudim, with their rulers attempted to stone them. 6. They were aware of it and fled to Lystra and Derbe, cities of Lycaonia, and to the region that lies round about. 7. And there they preached the Besorah. 8. And there sat a certain man at Lystra, who could not use his feet, being disabled from his mother's womb, which had never walked. 9. The same heard Paulus speak, who steadfastly looking at him, and perceiving that he had faith to be healed. 10. Said with a loud voice, Stand upright on your feet. And he leaped and walked. 11. And when the people saw what Paulus had done, they lifted up their voices, saying in the speech of Lycaonian, The Elohim, mighty ones, are come down to us in the likeness of men. 12. And they called Barnabas Jupiter, and Paul Mercurius, because he was the chief speaker. 13. Then the priest of Jupiter, who was before their city, brought oxen and garlands to the gates, and would have done sacrifice with the people. 14. Which when the emissaries, Barnabas and Paulus, heard of, they rent their clothes, and ran in among the people, shouting. 15. And saying, Men, why do you these things? We also are men of like passions with you, and proclaim to ye that ye should turn from these vanities to the living Elohim, which made the Shamayim, the heaven, and earth, and the sea, and all things that are in it. 16. Who in times past allowed all nations to have their own halakot, laws. 17. Nevertheless, he left not himself without witness, in that he did good, and gave us rain from Shamayim, and fruitful seasons, filling our hearts with food and gladness. 18. And with these words they had difficulty restraining the people, which they do not sacrifice to them. 19. And then came certain Yahudim from Antioch and Iconium, who persuaded the people, and having stoned Paulus, drew him out of the city, presuming that he was dead. 20. But as the disciples stood round about him, he rose up and came into the city, and the next day he departed with Barnabas to Derbe. 21. And when they had preached the Besorah to the city, and had taught many, they returned again to Lystra, and to Iconium, and Antioch. 22. Confirming the souls of the disciples, and exhorting them to continue in the faith, and that we must, through much tribulation, enter into the kingdom of Elohim. 23. And when they had appointed them elders in every congregation, and had petitioned with fasting, they commended them to Yahushua, on whom they believed. 24. And after they had passed throughout Pisidia, they came to Pamphylia. 25. And when they had preached the word in Perge, they went down to Attalia. 26. And there sailed to Antioch, from where they had been recommended to the favour of Elohim for the work which they fulfilled. 27. And when they had come and had gathered the congregation together, they rehearsed all that Elohim had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith to the nations. 28. And there they stayed a long time with the disciples. Okay, so that now brings us to the end of Acts chapter 14. So let's go back and have a look at some of the footnotes in Acts chapter 14. So the first footnote we have is in verse 3. So they stayed there a long time, speaking boldly in Yahweh, who granted testimony to the word. So let's have a look at this. Granted testimony to the word. So the Torah to the nations. Okay. So the nations were being taught the Torah by the emissaries. Okay. So Torah to the nations. Okay. So let's go back and have a look at the next footnote, which is in verse 16. Who in times past allowed all nations to have their own halakot. So let's have a look at this. So to walk in their own ways, contrary to Torah in disobedience. Okay? To walk in their own ways, or their own laws, contrary to Torah in disobedience. Okay? So let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 19. And then came certain Yahudim from Antioch and Iconium, who persuaded the people, and having stoned Paulus, drew him out of the city, presuming that he was dead. Okay, let's have a look at this, presuming. So we have here, Paulus was stoned and left for dead, while Yahushua was stoned on the tree and died from massive bleeding within 3.5 hours, according to the evidence in the Gospels. See timing of hanging in Mark 15:25. Paulus' eyes were damaged also in the stoning. Okay, so let's have a look at Mark 15:25 quickly. So Mark 15:25, and it reads, and it was the third watch, and they impaled him. Okay, so and it was the third watch, and they impaled him. So we have a footnote here for third watch. So let's have a look at this. Not exactly 9 a.m. as wrongly assumed, but 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. time period. Mark is not defining an exact time when the impalement took place, but people have assumed this incorrectly. The Hebrew time was defined in 3 hourly watches of 4 segments in a 12-hour cycle. This is in complete harmony with John 19:12, where he also mentions Yahushua being ready but not impaled till after 12 p.m. noon. Mark therefore, by saying the third watch, is giving us a time frame of when he was hung on the tree. Note, both Mark and John were Hebrew writing for the Hebrew people and for Israel, and not for the Romans, who were their enemies. The Gentiles have to come into Israel to receive their instructions and understanding. The Hebrew people divided the full 24-hour day from sunrise to sunrise into 2 slots of about 12 hours each. This was then further divided into 4 watches, each of 3-hour segments. Therefore, both John and Mark are in agreement when the one understands this fact, or when one understands this fact. There were no time clocks or watches as today, but time was measured by sundials around the 1st century in Israel. So we get an approximation of time. So also see Exodus 14:24, Judges 7:19, 2 Samuel 13:34, and 2 Kings 11:5 for further studies. Third hour or third watch of the day is 12 p.m. onwards to approximate 3 p.m. 6th hour or third watch 12 p.m. to 3 p.m. Mark new watches. Check Mark 6:48. Whoever translated this gospel from the Hebrew confused the term into hours, while Mark never described an hour or an exact hour. 9th hour or 4th watch, 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Okay, so we have a table here, hours and watches. So third watch, which falls between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. That's Mark 15:25 and John 19:4. And the 6th hour equals the third watch. So we also have 6th hour, which is third watch, which falls between 12 p.m. and 3 p.m. So that's in Mark 15:33. 9th hour is really fourth and last watch of the day from 3 p.m. to 6 p.m. Then a new day starts at sunset. And this is in Mark 15:34. Okay? Okay? So let's go to the next footnote. Which is in verse 20. But as the disciples stood round about him, he rose up and came into the city, and the next day he departed with Barnabas to Derbe. Okay, so let's have a look at this, to Derbe. Okay, so Paulus lived to tell the tale of his stoning. One wonders why he was stoned, but the reality is because he was teaching Torah teachings, which the rabbinic Jews disliked in synagogues, as they did not line up with their style of teaching, a hard to keep faith. Okay, so let's read that again. So Paulus lived to tell the tale of his stoning. One wonders why he was stoned, but the reality is because he was teaching Torah teachings, which the rabbinic Jews disliked in synagogues, as they did not line up with their style of teaching, a hard to keep faith. Okay, so let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 27. And when they had come and had gathered the congregation together, they rehearsed all that Elohim had done with them, and how he had opened the door of faith to the nations. So let's have a look at this, faith to the nations. So, searching for the lost sheep in the house of Israel, the 10 tribes. Okay? So he had opened the door of faith to the nations. So the nations being searching for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, the 10 tribes. Okay? So that now brings us to the end of Acts chapter 14. So I thank you all for watching, and I hope to see you on the other side. This is Rabbi Beaton saying thank you for watching, and Shalom Shalom. Baruch Shem Kivod Malkuto Leolam Va'ed. Benevolent be the name of his esteemed kingdom, forever and ever and ever. Amen.